the richness and the contribution of generative change is that you really can you're creating something in your life that does not exist now and maybe has never existed before, maybe has never existed for anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, so there's a number of things that distinguish generative coaching from other coaching programs, and these are the kinds of things that people will give feedback about. And so the first is that we say that the root of anything generative, it always starts with your state and your relationship, right? So there's no generative change unless you're in a generative state, right? So that's always the first thing. Because, a lot of coaching, you don't even pay attention to the state the person is, and it's also, typically it's very verbal, it's very
Yes.
analytical.
Mm.
Well, when generative change, we're starting with this idea of a generative state and then a generative relationship. And what we mean by generative in this case is that 1 + 1 makes more than 2, right? So you and me, it's not just you say do something, I do something, and you get the sum of our contributions. That actually something new emerges through our interaction.
Mm.
And one of the other things that we emphasize a lot in generative coaching, and this is another thing we get feedback about how valuable this is for people who are doing coaching, is this idea of emphasizing multiple intelligences. And multiple intelligences means, in NLP, we talk about visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Multiple intelligences is that you're not just taking a cognitive view of your visual or auditory, you're actually using the intelligence of the body. You're using these, you're using, again, multiple representational systems, but also those representational systems have their own intelligence. And we use, of course, things like metaphorical intelligence. So we're engaging a lot more of the whole, the whole being of the other person. I think the third thing that really distinguishes the generative coaching approach is the way that we deal with so-called interferences, resistances, obstacles. Uh, most of the time, even kind of in a lot of coaching, you don't even, you don't focus on the obstacles. You're only going to focus on outcomes. But then the obstacles come out unconsciously. Or you try to fight the obstacle, avoid the obstacle, get rid of the obstacle.
Mm.
In the generative change work, we're saying that, the obstacles are not in the way, right? The obstacles are the way, right? The obstacle is actually, as Milton Erickson would say, the symptom is a solution. So rather than actually fight against it, we're doing what you might call a kind of psychological aikido with the obstacle. We're actually, welcoming it, bringing it in, engaging it, and then shifting relationship with it, so that it actually, we say, you're going to transform the obstacle into a resource. When you put all those things together, it's really shifting a lot about the way you work. We also emphasize a big part of the generative change work, the whole notion of practice, that practices are the way in which you really, deepen change and sustain it. And coaching, I mean, I was a coach to my son's baseball team and my kids' soccer teams. And one of the things you realize as a sports coach is you spend most of your time practicing. You don't. We used to practice 3 times as much as you actually play the game. And so the practice it's not just okay. You're going to come in, you do the technique, everything's done. It's like no, you gotta commit to practice, and that's how you get it, quote, in the muscle. So I think these are some of the unique features of generative coaching that we get feedback about from the people who've taken the course.